Welcome back to the secret underground lair. So I marked this out the other day, or on our last video, and we had you may remember there was a little bit of a tail section I talked about. I wasn't quite comfortable with that overnight and realized I'd calculated this incorrectly. The distance, the number of cuts needs to be divided by the outside circumference, not the inside circumference. So by making that adjustment, went back and redid the math, go over all that if you like. But bottom line is the distance between the lines needs to be 12 millimeters, well 11.8 millimeters, but I'm calling it 12, and spread over 18 cuts. So I remarked this, actually 19 cuts. So I've remarked this, and what I'm going to do, I'm going to mark them again, because what needs to happen is I have to cover this all over with tape to prevent tear out. So I'm going to put the tape on it, remark it, and then we'll start those cuts. That will be today's adventure. Okay, got our piece all marked. One more line to make because the first cut is going to be using the fence. So I'm going to put this temporary fence up here to guide that first cut, and then we have a little tool to help us with the saw. So one more mark and then we're ready to make some cuts. Okay, there is our first cut. Now the important part of this is making sure that this end is supported the entire way. As I make more and more cuts, of course, this is going to want to start flopping around. So I need to be very careful to support this piece. So let me get fully supported, and then I'm going to attach the guide here and explain a little bit about what my guide can do. So I have put a little guide onto the front of the saw here. I fabricated this little guide to help me make sure these cuts are going to be perfectly parallel. And in the guide is a little pin here, and that little pin can be adjusted by this. So the intent is that pin will sit in the cut that was just made, and it keeps the blade of the saw exactly 12 millimeters away. Now there's still an opportunity for the saw to do a little bit of racking from side to side, but that's why I put the lines on here so that I can use the lines and follow. I can follow the lines pretty carefully using this, just by watching the line. And you can see on that last cut, it appears as though I drifted just a little bit. So I'm going to have to be a little careful in making this first cut. Yeah, I don't like that drifting. I might actually do one more cut with the guide just to get that in line again. I don't like the fact that that drifted. So let me make a minor adjustment and I'll come back and start making the series of cuts. Right, managed to get that cut trued up. So I'll make one cut with this little pin in place and you can see how that works. And then go and fast forward and make the remainder of the cuts. Okay, we have all our cuts made. When I first started making the cut, the guide was just slightly more than 12 millimeters apart, so I had to make a little adjustment partway through, but we now have it set the way we want it. So the next step will be taking off the tape, cleaning out the cuts, and then putting this thing on the buck. So I'll come back when I have this, when the tape off and the piece cleaned out a little bit. So even with the tape on there, there was still some tear out and a couple bad bits here. But I am going through every cut now with some 180 sandpaper and just trying to clean up the edge of the cut a little bit. So this is a little tedious, but it does make a difference. And when we glue these pieces together, it'll make it a substantially better fit. Okay, so there's our fit. I'm just going to give that a little vacuum again, just to kind of clear out any chips that were in, any sawdust that's gotten into the crack. So just get that all cleared out, and then we should be ready to do some glue up. Put this on the buck. Be back in a minute. So here is a dry fit of the bend. Just wanted to put this in the buck and make sure that the piece would bend around the way I want it. I could clamp it the way that it needs to be clamped. And that's looking pretty good right now. So what I'll be doing is taking it apart and putting glue into these joints, into the cracks. You can see how it's going to fit in there. It's a little dark in there, but everything clamps up pretty nicely together. And on the back, on the curved surface itself, it's a nice smooth surface. If you look carefully, you can actually see some ridge lines, but not many. And this is a testament to cutting lots of small kerfs as opposed to fewer big kerfs. If there were fewer bigger kerfs, it would be much more of an angular curve. But with with more kerfs and smaller kerfs, we wind up with a much smoother curve. Okay, let me take this apart and get set for glue. Okay, here is the moment of truth. So on the buck, I have put some cellophane around every edge that is likely to touch the glue because we don't want this piece sticking to the buck. If it does stick to the cellophane, fine, it just pulls the cellophane off and we can sand that clear. I've got some water, so I'm going to be spraying down the entire piece here and trying to make sure I get some moisture into the cracks. The glue that I'm using is this Gorilla glue. It's expanding glue, so the intention is, of course, it reacts with moisture and will expand about 3 times over its curing. So the intent is by getting it deep in the cracks, it will expand and fill the cracks, just providing a little more structure to the piece. So I just want to make sure that I can get glue down in there deeply, and yeah, away we go. I'm just going to ensure that I have access to all the cracks here. Some are opening up a little bit more than others. That's looking pretty good. So I do have to work rather quickly on this. It's a lot of cracks to get through in a very short amount of time. So yeah, if you sense panic in me, well, that's why. Okay, how about that? It went a little smoother than I expected, to be frank. That's all good. All right, we're going to just leave that to set. What I might do in the meantime is just kind of mark the other end, or get the other end taped and then marked for making the cuts down at that end. So while this is setting, I'll do that. So I've got the other end of the top now taped and marked, ready to make some cuts. And you can see in here with the glue setting up how it is foaming up to kind of fill in that crack a little better. So I'm gonna let this sit for a little bit more. And then for now, I think it's time for a bite of lunch. Okay, I'm giving the top a couple hours now to cure, to set actually. It's going to take 24 hours to cure. But we can now remove the clamps, see what we have. And if possible, clean up a little bit of the overage. Glue seems to be stuck pretty well to our plastic. There we are. It goes off nicely. Good. And there is our curve from the inside. From the outside, we're looking pretty nice. So that's what we're looking like from the outside. And as the light hits it, you can just see a little bit of banding with some sanding that may disappear, but we may be left with that kind of remnant. But overall, that's a nice gentle curve. Very, very pleased with that. So I'm just going to take a knife and just try and scrape some of this off while it's still hopefully soft enough to get to it. So I've gotten most of the stuff scraped off here. The rest will be sanded. We'll probably do a little bit of filling too, just to kind of get that all nice and even up. And I'm just using a little 1/4-inch chisel and just kind of going after this stuff. It comes off fairly easily with this, and it may be coming off easily because it hasn't completely cured. So I think the timing of this is probably right. That's just cutting it off. Cutting the excess out, really, is all I'm doing now. So I'll put you on fast forward as I get rid of the rest of this. Okay, so that is our edge, our inside surface kind of scraped off. A little bit of damage done in here from the tear out of the saw, so that's going to require a little bit of filler, but there will be a fair bit of sanding and work to be done on that once the glue has cured. However, now that we have that part done, let's make our cuts on this end, and then we can start, we can do our bending down here. Do a little bit of cleanup first. A little bit of binding at the end was because the piece was trying to collapse in on itself, so hence the reason why we need to be sitting flat. Now we are. So I'm going to get our guide put back in place and we'll finish off these cuts. All right, I have our top set on the work table, ready to make our cuts. Got our little guide in place so the pin will follow along that previous cut. I'll get over about here, and then I'm going to shuffle the piece down just a little bit because I want to avoid the stop block that I have on the table. Put you on time lapse for this one though. So clearly the trick to this is don't move the saw too fast. I ran a little quickly through here and I got some pretty nasty tear out, so I'm going to have some filling to do in here, which I don't really like, but that's required. Okay, let me just get all the tape off this. We'll sand it and clean it out, and then we'll be ready to put it up on the buck. All right, spent a little bit more time cleaning out the sawdust from these gaps, so hopefully the glue will set in a little bit better on this side. I'm not complaining about the other side, but just every time you do something, you look for ways to improve. The challenge that I have in this mess down here is primarily one of a void in the wood underneath that first layer of ply. So that's kind of why I had such a vicious tear out in here. Yeah, not really happy about that. I'm going to use a knife just to kind of clean up some of the scruffiness in there so the glue penetrates a little bit better in that spot. Back in one sec. Okay, now let's get some glue into these joints. All right, glue applied. Now we'll get our buck in place. We have our second side put together. And just for fun, here to there is 38 inches. We are smack on. I like it when a plan comes together. And as you can see, we used up almost the entire bottle of that, of the glue, doing those two joints. Two sides, rather. Okay, so that's going to need a couple hours to set. So we likely won't get to much more today. I'll come back and we'll do some sanding of this tomorrow. And then we can start, I need to drill some holes in here for aligning onto the back. I did get word from our customer that the baseboard that we're trying to accommodate is about 5 inches I'll look at that again, but it's about 5 inches, which is going to present a little bit of a challenge on the back of the cabinet, as we have the floor really close to that dimension. So it's going to be, we'll take a look at what we can do there, but anyway, at least we know what we're working with and we can accommodate that. So I'll do a little bit of planning and thinking about that cutout on the back of the cabinet to accommodate baseboard. And we'll get to that tomorrow. So again, thank you very much for watching. Please like and subscribe. I will see you on the next video.